The sun had set, and the sky was painted in shades of deep orange and purple as twilight settled over the small suburban town of Ridgewood. The air carried a warm, sticky humidity that clung to everything it touched. Cicadas buzzed lazily in the background, their rhythmic chirping filling the silence of the evening. It was a quiet night, one where most people were either indoors enjoying dinner or winding down after a long day. But for Maya Johnson, this particular evening would turn into something she could never have imagined. Maya was walking home from her job at the local cafe, her steps steady but unhurried. She always took this route through the park. It was shorter than going around the block, and the path was lined with tall trees that provided a soothing canopy of shade even during the day. At 24 years old, Maya was strikingly beautiful, with smooth cocoa-brown skin, full lips, and curly hair that framed her face like a halo. Her presence commanded attention wherever she went, though not always for the right reasons. In a town where diversity wasn't exactly celebrated, Maya often felt like an outsider. People stared at her when she walked by, some out of curiosity, others out of prejudice. Still, she carried herself with grace and confidence, refusing to let anyone make her feel less than she was. As she strolled along the dimly lit pathway, her mind wandered to lighter thoughts. She thought about the tips she'd earned that day. A little extra money wouldn't hurt, and how excited she was to try out a new recipe her mom had sent her earlier. Life wasn't perfect, but Maya had learned to find joy in the small things. She hummed softly under her breath, her sneakers crunching against the gravel beneath her feet. But then, just as she reached the midpoint of the park, the sound of tires rolling slowly across pavement interrupted her peaceful moment. Maya glanced up and saw a police cruiser pulling alongside her. Its headlights illuminated the narrow path, casting long shadows on the ground. Two officers sat inside, their expressions unreadable behind the windshield. One of them leaned out, slightly, his hand resting on the doorframe. "Excuse me, ma'am," he called out, his voice sharp and commanding. "What are you doing out here so late?" Maya stopped in her tracks, startled by the sudden intrusion. Her heart skipped a beat, but she quickly reminded herself to stay calm. After all, she hadn't done anything wrong. Smiling politely, she replied, "I'm just heading home. I work at the cafe near Main Street." The officer frowned, studying her carefully. His partner, who remained seated, adjusted his position slightly to get a better look at her. Something about their demeanor made Maya uneasy. They weren't speaking to her like they were concerned citizens helping someone find their way. They were scrutinizing her, sizing her up as if she were already guilty of something. "We need to see some ID," the first officer said abruptly, cutting off any further explanation Maya might have offered. He opened his car door and stepped out, his boots crunching loudly against the gravel. His partner followed suit, both men towering over her now. Maya swallowed hard, trying to push down the rising knot of anxiety in her chest. She knew the drill. When authority figures asked for identification, arguing only made things worse. So without hesitation, she reached into her bag and pulled out her wallet. "I have my license right here," she said, holding it out toward them. Her hands trembled slightly, though she hoped they wouldn't notice. The officer snatched the card from her grasp, examining it closely under the glow of his flashlight. He read her name aloud, Maya Johnson, and exchanged a glance with his partner. There was something unspoken between them, a silent agreement that sent shivers down Maya's spine. Whatever they were thinking, it wasn't good. "You match the description of someone we're looking for," the second officer chimed in, his tone clipped and accusatory. "There's been a report of shoplifting at the convenience store downtown. We're bringing you in for questioning." Maya's eyes widened in disbelief. "Shoplifting? That's impossible. I haven't been near a store all evening. You can check the security footage. I've been working since noon." Her protests fell on deaf ears. The officers ignored her completely, their focus shifting to more aggressive actions. Before she could react, one of them grabbed her arm and spun her around, forcing her wrists behind her back. Cold metal cuffs clicked into place, biting painfully into her skin. Maya gasped, both from the physical discomfort and the sheer shock of what was happening. Wait, she cried, struggling against their grip. You don't understand. I didn't do anything wrong. Please listen to me. But the officers showed no mercy. They shoved her roughly toward the cruiser, ignoring her pleas. As she stumbled forward, her mind raced with questions. Why were they treating her like this? Was it because of her race, because of how she looked? She wanted to scream, to fight back, but fear rooted her to the spot. All she could do was comply, hoping against hope that this nightmare would end, soon. Once inside the car, Maya pressed herself against the seat, trying to put as much distance as possible between her and the officers. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away furiously. Crying wouldn't help. Not now. Not here. Instead, she focused on breathing deeply, counting each inhale and exhale to keep herself grounded. The drive to the police station felt endless, every second stretching longer than the last. Outside, the familiar streets of Ridgewood blurred past the window, but Maya barely noticed. Her thoughts swirled chaotically, replaying the events of the past few minutes over and over again. How had her ordinary evening turned into such chaos? What would happen next? And most importantly, would anyone believe her side of the story? By the time the cruiser pulled into the precinct parking lot, Maya's nerves were frayed to the breaking point. She climbed out of the car with shaky legs, flanked by the two officers who continued to treat her like a criminal. Every step toward the building felt heavier than the last, each movement dragging her closer to an uncertain fate. Yet amidst the fear and confusion, a spark of determination began to flicker within her. No matter what happened next, Maya vowed to stand her ground. She was innocent and she deserved to be treated as such. The fluorescent lights inside the police station buzzed faintly, casting a cold, sterile glow over everything. The air smelled faintly of stale coffee and cleaning products, a mix that made Maya's stomach churn even more than it already was. Her hands were still cuffed behind her back, and though she had asked politely to have them loosened, they were cutting into her skin. The officers ignored her request. As they led her down a narrow hallway, their boots clomping loudly against the tiled floor, Maya couldn't help but notice the curious glances from other officers seated at desks or standing near doorways. Some looked away quickly, pretending not to see her, while others stared openly, their expressions unreadable. Finally, they stopped in front of a small interrogation room. One of the officers pushed the door open and gestured for her to go inside. "Sit," he ordered gruffly, pointing to a metal chair bolted to the floor. Maya hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to protest again, but ultimately decided it was better to comply. She didn't want to give them any reason to escalate things further. Slowly, she lowered herself onto the hard seat, wincing as the cuffs dug deeper into her wrists. The room was tiny, barely large enough to fit the table and two chairs. A single camera mounted on the wall blinked red, silently recording every second of her ordeal. Maya glanced up at it, wondering if anyone watching would recognize how unjust this all was. Would anyone care? Or was she just another statistic? Another black woman caught in the system's gears? Moments later, the two officers entered the room, slamming the door shut behind them with an audible thud that echoed through the cramped space. Officer Grayson, the taller of the two, placed a thin file folder on the table in front of her. His partner, Officer Myers, leaned casually against the wall, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on her like a predator sizing up its prey. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating, until Grayson finally broke it. "This is you, isn't it?" he said sharply, sliding a piece of paper across the table toward her. It was a blurry black and white photo taken from a store security camera. In the image, a dark-skinned woman stood near a shelf, holding what appeared to be a bottle of perfume. Maya squinted at the picture, trying to make sense of it. At first glance, yes, the person in the photo looked vaguely similar to her. Same general build, same complexion, but there were key differences. The hairstyle was completely different for one thing, and the clothing didn't match anything Maya owned. "That's not me," she said firmly, pushing the photo back toward him. "I haven't been to a store today. I've been working since noon." Grayson scoffed, leaning forward so his face was inches from hers. "You expect us to believe that? You're telling me you just happen to look exactly like the suspect? It's called racial profiling, Maya shot back, her voice rising despite her best efforts to stay calm. There are millions of black women in this country. Just because we share the same skin color doesn't mean I'm guilty. Her words seemed to anger him even more. He slammed his fist on the table, making her jump. Watch your tone with me, Missy. We're trying to do our jobs here. Your job is to protect people, not harass them, Maya countered, her frustration bubbling over. But before she could say anything else, Myers stepped in, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Oh, so now you're an expert on policing? Maybe you can tell us how to catch real criminals instead of wasting our time. Maya clenched her jaw, biting back a retort. Arguing wasn't going to get her anywhere, not with these men. They weren't interested in hearing her side of the story. To them, she was already guilty, no matter what evidence might prove otherwise. She forced herself to take a deep breath, reminding herself to stay composed. Losing her temper would only make things worse. For the next hour, the officers peppered her with questions, none of which she could answer because she genuinely had no connection to the alleged crime. They asked about her whereabouts earlier, that day, her employment history, even her family background. Each question felt more invasive than the last, as if they were searching for some hidden flaw or inconsistency that would justify their accusations. When Maya explained that she'd been working at the cafe since noon, they demanded names of coworkers who could vouch for her. When she mentioned her manager, they acted as though she were lying, insisting she provide proof immediately. You know, Grayson said at one point, tapping the table rhythmically with his pen, people like you always claim innocence when they're caught red-handed, but eventually the truth comes out. People like me? Maya repeated, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. What does that even mean? Are you saying I'm guilty just because I'm black? Grayson smirked, clearly amused by her reaction. I didn't say that. Don't put words in my mouth. But Maya wasn't fooled. His tone, his body language, the way he kept circling back to irrelevant details, it was all part of a pattern she recognized far too well. These officers weren't investigating a crime. They were targeting her because of the color of her skin. And the longer she sat there, the clearer it became that proving her innocence wouldn't be easy. As the interrogation dragged on, Maya's mind began to wander. She thought about her family, her mom, who always told her to stand tall, no matter what life threw her way, her older brother Marcus, fiercely protective and quick to defend her honor, and her friends, who loved her unconditionally. Would they come looking for her if she didn't return home soon? Had anyone realized she was missing yet? The thought of being trapped in this room indefinitely filled her with panic, but she tried to push it aside. Panicking wouldn't solve anything. At one point, Myers pulled out his phone and showed her a series of photos, more surveillance footage, mugshots, anything they thought might shake her confidence. Take a good look, he said smugly. Still sticking to your story? Maya studied the images carefully, noting the subtle differences between herself and the supposed suspect. Different hairstyles, different outfits, even slightly different facial features. None of it matched her description perfectly, but she knew pointing that out wouldn't change their minds. Instead, she simply nodded and said, "That's not me. I don't know why you keep showing me these pictures." Myers rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed by her persistence. You're either lying or you're incredibly lucky. Either way, we'll figure it out. Hours passed, or maybe it only felt that way. Time seemed to blur together in the oppressive confines of the interrogation room. Maya's throat was dry, her head aching from the relentless barrage of questions. Despite her exhaustion, she refused to break. Every time they accused her of something, she denied it calmly but firmly. Every time they tried to twist her words, she clarified without losing her composure. Deep down, she knew she couldn't let them win. Giving in, even for a moment, would validate everything they believed about her. Eventually, Grayson stood up, stretching his arms above his head as if bored with the whole situation. "All right, let's take a break," he muttered to Myers. Without another word, both officers left the room, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts. For a few precious minutes, she allowed herself to relax, sinking lower into the uncomfortable chair. Her wrists ached from the tight cuffs and her muscles were stiff from sitting in the same position for so long. But more than anything, she felt drained, emotionally, mentally, physically. This wasn't how her night was supposed to end. She should have been home by now, cooking dinner or scrolling through social media in bed. Instead, she was stuck in a police station, fighting for her freedom against men who refused to see her humanity. Just as she was starting to wonder if they'd forgotten about her entirely, the door creaked open again. This time, however, it wasn't Grayson or Myers who walked in. It was a young woman wearing a uniform, her badge gleaming under the harsh light. Her nameplate read, Sergeant Rachel Mendez. Unlike the other officers, she carried herself, with a quiet kindness, her dark eyes soft but alert. "Hi, Maya," she said gently, pulling out the chair across from her. "I'm Sergeant Mendez. I heard what's been going on. Are you okay?" Maya blinked, surprised by the sudden shift in tone. For a moment, she wasn't sure how to respond. Was this some kind of trick? Another tactic to get her to slip up? But something about Rachel's demeanor felt genuine, almost comforting. I guess? Maya stammered, unsure of what else to say. "They think I stole something, but I didn't, I swear." Rachel nodded slowly, studying her face intently. "I believe you," she said after a pause. "And I'm going to do everything I can to help you get out of here." Though Maya wanted to trust her, skepticism lingered in the back of her mind. After everything she'd endured that night, it was hard to imagine anyone stepping in to save her. Still, Rachel's presence gave her a sliver of hope, a reminder that not everyone in the world was blind to injustice. Maya's eyes lingered on Sergeant Rachel Mendez as the young officer settled into the chair across from her. For a moment, Maya couldn't find the words to respond. She had spent hours being interrogated by officers who treated her like a criminal, their voices sharp and accusing, their gazes cold and dismissive. But Rachel was different. Her tone was calm, almost soothing, and her expression carried none of the hostility Maya had grown accustomed to seeing that night. Still, after everything she'd endured, Maya wasn't ready to let her guard down just yet. "Why should I believe you?" Maya asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The question came out more vulnerable than she intended, but it reflected the turmoil brewing inside her. She wanted to trust Rachel, to believe that someone in this building might actually care about justice. Yet doubt clawed at her mind, whispering reminders of how often people in power failed those who looked like her. Rachel didn't flinch at the question. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on the table. "Because I've seen this before," she admitted quietly, her gaze steady. "I know what it's like to be singled out because of how you look or where you come from. And I don't think you deserve to be treated this way." Her honesty caught Maya off guard. For the first time since entering the police station, she felt a flicker of connection, a shared understanding that transcended words. Rachel's admission wasn't just an attempt to comfort her. It was a confession, a glimpse into her own experiences with prejudice. That small act of vulnerability made Maya feel less alone, even if only for a moment. "I didn't do anything wrong," Maya said again, her voice firmer now. It wasn't a plea for sympathy, it was a statement of fact, one she needed Rachel to hear clearly. "I've been working all day. My manager can confirm it. My coworkers saw me too. I don't even know why they're accusing me." Rachel nodded slowly, absorbing every word. "I believe you," she repeated. "But unfortunately, belief isn't enough. We need proof to get you out of here." The weight of those words hit Maya hard. Proof, evidence, validation. These were things she didn't have immediate access to, not while sitting handcuffed in a police interrogation room. Her frustration bubbled over, and for a brief moment, she considered lashing out. How could anyone expect her to prove her innocence when she hadn't been given a fair chance to defend herself? But instead of giving in to anger, she took a deep breath and focused on Rachel. If anyone in this building could help her, it was this woman sitting across from her. "What do we do now?" Maya asked, her voice tinged with desperation. "They won't listen to me. They don't care. Rachel hesitated, glancing briefly toward the door as if ensuring no one else was listening. "First, we document everything," she said firmly. "Every accusation, every insult, every detail of how you've been treated tonight. If this goes further, if you decide to file a complaint, I want to make sure we have all the facts straight." Maya's heart sank at the mention of filing a complaint. As much as she wanted accountability, the idea of dragging this ordeal out any longer felt overwhelming. All she wanted was to go home, to crawl into bed and pretend none of this had happened. But deep down, she knew Rachel was right. Silence wouldn't protect her, or anyone else who might face the same treatment in the future. "Okay," Maya agreed reluctantly. "What else?" Rachel reached into her pocket and pulled out a small notepad and pen. "Next, I'm going to contact your emergency contact. Do you have someone who can vouch for you? A family member, maybe?" At the mention of family, Maya's thoughts immediately turned to Marcus, her older brother. He was fiercely protective, the kind of person who would move mountains to ensure her safety. Just imagining his reaction to hearing about this nightmare brought both relief and guilt. Relief because she knew he'd fight for her, and guilt because she hated burdening him with her struggles. "My brother," Maya said quickly. "His name is Marcus. He lives nearby. Can you call him?" Rachel smiled faintly, jotting down the information. "Of course, I'll reach out to him right away. In the meantime, try to stay calm. I'm going to do everything I can to get you out of here." As Rachel stood up to leave, Maya felt a surge of gratitude mixed with apprehension. Gratitude because someone was finally standing up for her, and apprehension because she still didn't know what lay ahead. Would Rachel's intervention make a difference, or would the other officers simply brush her aside? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but she forced herself to focus on the present. One step at a time, that was all she could manage. An hour passed, or maybe 2. Time seemed irrelevant in the sterile confines of the interrogation room. Maya's mind drifted between hope and despair, replaying the events of the night over and over again. She thought about the park, the officers pulling up beside her, the accusations hurled without evidence. She thought about her mother's advice, to always carry herself with dignity, no matter the circumstances. And she thought about Rachel, whose quiet determination offered a glimmer of light in an otherwise dark situation. Finally, the door creaked open again, and Rachel stepped back, inside. This time, however, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood Marcus, his tall frame filling the doorway. His usually warm brown eyes were stormy with anger, and his jaw was clenched so tightly Maya could see the muscles twitching beneath his skin. When their eyes met, the tension in the room melted slightly, replaced by a wave of relief that washed over Maya. "Are you okay?" Marcus demanded, rushing to her side. His hands hovered uncertainly near hers, unsure whether to touch her or respect the cuffs binding her wrists. "Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine," Maya assured him, though her voice cracked under the strain of holding back tears. "Just tired." Marcus turned sharply to Rachel, his tone sharp but controlled. "What exactly is going on here? Why is my sister locked up like some kind of criminal?" Rachel raised her hands in a calming gesture. "Let me explain," she said evenly. "Your sister was brought in based on a report of shoplifting. However, there's no concrete evidence tying her to the crime, and the accusations seem questionable, at best." "Questionable?" Marcus echoed incredulously. "You mean racist?" Rachel didn't deny it. Instead, she nodded solemnly. "That's part of why I stepped in. I'm documenting everything to ensure your sister's rights are protected. But right now, we need to focus on getting her released." Marcus exhaled sharply, running a hand through his close-cropped hair. "All right," he said, turning back to Maya. "We're getting you out of here, no matter what it takes." With Marcus by her side, Maya felt a renewed sense of strength. Together they listened as Rachel outlined the next steps. First, they needed to provide alibis, proof that Maya had been at work during the time of the alleged theft. Luckily, Maya's manager was cooperative, confirming her schedule over the phone and promising to send documentation via email. Next, Rachel suggested contacting a lawyer, just in case the situation escalated further. Marcus immediately pulled out his phone, dialing a number he clearly had memorized. While Marcus handled logistics, Maya allowed herself a moment to process everything. Having her brother there changed the dynamic entirely. Where she had felt powerless and alone, she now felt supported and protected. Marcus's presence was a reminder that she wasn't fighting this battle by herself, and neither was Rachel. Slowly but surely, allies were stepping forward to challenge the injustice unfolding around them. As the minutes ticked by, progress began to show. The manager's email arrived, complete with timestamps and witness statements. Rachel reviewed the documents carefully before presenting them to her superiors, emphasizing the lack of credible evidence against Maya. Meanwhile, Marcus spoke sternly with the officers involved, refusing to back down until they acknowledged their mistakes. By the time the cuffs were finally removed from Maya's wrists, her body felt stiff and sore, but her spirit was lighter. Standing beside Marcus and Rachel, she walked out of the interrogation room with her head held high. Though the ordeal wasn't over, not fully, she knew she had taken the first crucial steps toward reclaiming her dignity. And as they stepped out into the cool night air, leaving the oppressive fluorescent lights behind, Maya vowed never to let fear silence her again. The cool night air hit Maya like a wave as she stepped out of the police station, her legs still shaky but determined to carry her forward. For the first time in hours, she felt the weight of oppression lift slightly from her shoulders. The cuffs were gone, and Marcus was by her side, his protective energy radiating warmth even in the chill of the evening. Sergeant Rachel stood a few steps behind them, her presence reassuring despite the chaos they had just endured. But as much as Maya wanted to breathe freely again, she knew this wasn't the end. Not really. There was still work to be done, justice to fight for, and wounds that needed healing. As they walked toward Marcus's car parked across the street, he turned to Maya, his voice low but firm. "You're coming home with me tonight," he said, leaving no room for argument. "Mom and Dad are already worried sick. I called them while you were inside, but I don't want you staying alone after all this." Maya nodded weakly too, exhausted to protest. She appreciated her brother's concern, knowing full well that being surrounded by loved ones would help soften the blow of what had happened. Still, a part of her wished she could disappear into solitude, away from prying eyes and sympathetic glances. She didn't feel ready to face anyone yet, not even her parents, whose love was boundless but whose disappointment in the world's injustices often mirrored her own. Once they reached the car, Marcus opened the passenger door for her, ensuring she was settled before rounding to the driver's seat. Rachel lingered outside, hesitating as if unsure whether to say goodbye or stay longer. Finally, she approached the window, leaning down so she could meet Maya's gaze directly. "I'm sorry this happened to you," Rachel said softly, her voice tinged with genuine regret. "No one deserves to be treated this way. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll do whatever I can to make sure those officers are held accountable." Maya stared at her, searching for any trace of insincerity, but found none. In Rachel's eyes, she saw determination, a quiet fire that promised action rather than empty words. It gave her a sliver of hope, something to hold on to amidst the wreckage of the night. "Thank you," Maya murmured, her voice barely audible, "for believing me, for stepping in when no one else did." Rachel offered a small, sad smile before stepping back. "Take care of yourself, okay? And let your family take care of you too." With that, she disappeared into the shadows of the precinct, leaving Maya and Marcus alone. As Marcus started the engine, the hum of the car filled the silence between them. Neither spoke for several minutes. The only sounds were the soft whirring of tires against pavement and the distant chirping of crickets. Maya leaned her head against the window, watching the blurred outlines of streetlights pass by. Her mind raced with thoughts she couldn't quite organize. Anger, fear, gratitude, exhaustion, all swirling together in a chaotic storm. "You don't have to talk about it now," Marcus said finally, breaking the silence. His tone was gentle but resolute, the kind of voice that invited openness without demanding it. "But when you're ready, I'm here. Mom and Dad too. We'll figure this out together." Maya swallowed hard, blinking back tears that threatened to spill over. She hated crying in front of others, especially Marcus, who always took her pain personally. But tonight she couldn't hold it in any longer. The dam broke, and sobs racked her body as she buried her face in her hands. Marcus pulled the car over to the side of the road, unbuckling his seatbelt so he could wrap an arm around her. He didn't say a word, simply letting her cry until the worst of it passed. When the tears subsided, Maya wiped her face with trembling hands, feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. Crying hadn't erased the trauma of the night, but it had released some of the pressure building inside her chest. She glanced at Marcus, guilt tugging at her heartstrings. "I'm sorry," she whispered hoarsely. "I didn't mean to fall apart like that." Marcus shook his head firmly. "Don't apologize for feeling. What happened to you tonight was wrong, so incredibly wrong, and you're allowed to feel however you need to. Hell, I'm mad enough for both of us right now." His words struck a chord deep within her. Anger, that raw, burning emotion, had been simmering beneath the surface ever since the officers had accused her of a crime she didn't commit. At first, she'd tried to suppress it, fearing that showing anger would only validate their prejudices. But now, sitting beside her brother, in the dim glow of the dashboard lights, she realized that suppressing her emotions wouldn't protect her. It wouldn't change what had happened, nor would it prevent it from happening again. No, anger wasn't something to bury. It was fuel. Fuel to fight back, to demand justice, to ensure that no one else endured what she had. "What do we do?" "Next," Maya asked, her voice steadier now. "How do we make sure this doesn't happen again?" Marcus exhaled sharply, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "First, we file a formal complaint against those officers. Their behavior tonight was unacceptable, and it needs to be documented. Second, we get you legal representation. Even though they let you go, there's still a chance they'll try to pin something on you later. We can't take any chances." Maya nodded slowly, absorbing his plan. Filing a complaint felt daunting, almost impossible, given how entrenched racism often seemed in institutions like law enforcement. But Marcus was right. They couldn't stay silent. Staying silent meant letting the system win, and Maya refused to give up without a fight. "And third," Marcus continued, turning to look at her, "we tell your story. Not just to family and friends, but to the world. Social media, news outlets, community groups, anywhere people will listen. The more light we shine on this, the harder it becomes for them to ignore it." At first, Maya hesitated. Sharing her experience publicly meant exposing herself to judgment, criticism, and possibly even retaliation. The thought terrified her, but then she remembered Rachel's words. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out." Maybe telling her story wouldn't just be about seeking justice for herself. It could also inspire others to speak out, to stand together against injustice. Strength came from unity, and unity began with courage. By the time they arrived at Marcus's apartment, Maya's resolve had solidified. She was still scared, still angry, still heartbroken, but she was also determined to reclaim her power, to turn pain into purpose, and to fight for a future where no one else had to endure what she had. Inside, the scent of lavender, candles greeted them, a soothing contrast to the tension of the evening. Marcus's girlfriend, Elena, greeted them warmly, her eyes widening with concern when she saw Maya's weary expression. Without asking questions, she handed Maya a mug of hot tea and wrapped her in a comforting hug. The gesture was simple but profound, reminding Maya that she wasn't alone in this fight. Later that night, as she lay on the couch under a blanket, Maya scrolled through her phone, drafting messages to friends and family. She typed out updates explaining what had happened and sharing snippets of her plan moving forward. Each message was met with outrage, support, and offers of help. By the time she drifted off to sleep, her phone buzzed endlessly with notifications, a testament to the network of love and solidarity surrounding her. Though the road ahead would undoubtedly be difficult, Maya fell asleep with a newfound sense of hope. She may have been targeted because of her race, harassed because of her appearance, and treated as guilty until proven innocent. But she had survived. And survival, she realized, was the first step toward triumph. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains of Marcus's apartment, casting golden streaks across the living room where Maya lay curled up on the couch. Her body ached from the stress of the previous night, and her mind felt heavy with thoughts that refused to settle. Despite the warmth of the blankets draped over her, she couldn't shake the chill that lingered deep within her bones, a reminder of the injustice she had endured. Yet as she opened her eyes and saw Elena bustling around the kitchen, preparing breakfast, and Marcus seated at the dining table scrolling through his phone, a sense of gratitude washed over her. She wasn't alone in this fight. Not anymore. Elena glanced up from flipping pancakes and offered Maya a warm smile. "Morning," she said softly, her voice gentle but encouraging. "How are you feeling?" Maya sat up slowly, rubbing her temples. "Like I've been hit by a truck," she admitted with a faint laugh, though there was no humor in it. "But better than last night." "That's something," Elena replied, setting a plate of food on the coffee table in front of her. "Eat. You need your strength for whatever comes next." Strength. The word echoed in Maya's mind as she picked at the pancake, her appetite dulled by anxiety. Strength wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, and spiritual. And while she didn't feel particularly strong in that moment, she knew she had people who believed in her enough to help her find it. Marcus joined them shortly after, carrying a folder filled with papers he'd printed overnight. "I did some digging," he announced, spreading the documents across the table. "These are the forms we'll need to file a formal complaint against Officers Grayson and Myers. I also reached out to a lawyer friend of mine. She specializes in civil rights cases, and she's willing to meet with us later today." Maya stared at the stack of papers, her heart pounding. Filing a complaint felt like stepping onto a battlefield without armor. What if nothing came of it? What if the department swept everything under the rug, dismissing her account as an isolated incident? These fears gnawed at her, but Marcus's confidence helped steady her resolve. One step at a time, he reminded her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're not doing this alone. Plenty of people are ready to back you up." As they discussed their plan, Maya's phone buzzed repeatedly on the table. Notifications flooded in, from friends checking on her, from co-workers offering support, and from strangers who had somehow heard about her ordeal. Word had spread quickly, thanks to Marcus discreetly sharing updates with trusted individuals. While Maya appreciated the outpouring of concern, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the attention. How could she possibly respond to everyone? And what would happen when the story gained even more traction? Her hesitation must have shown on her face because Elena leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "You don't have to handle all of this right away," she said kindly. "Focus on healing first. Let us deal with the logistics while you take care of yourself." Healing. It sounded so simple, yet it felt impossibly far away. Healing meant confronting the trauma head-on, unpacking the emotions she'd buried beneath. Layers of resilience, but how could she begin to process something so raw, so painful? Later that afternoon, Maya met with the lawyer Marcus had arranged, Ms. Patel, a petite woman with sharp eyes and an air of quiet authority. They gathered in Ms. Patel's office, a cozy space decorated with framed certificates and shelves lined with legal textbooks. As Maya recounted her experience, Ms. Patel listened intently, jotting notes and occasionally nodding in understanding. "This is textbook racial profiling," Ms. Patel said firmly once Maya finished speaking, "and unfortunately it's far too common. But that doesn't mean we can't fight back. With proper documentation and witnesses, including Sergeant Mendez, we stand a good chance of holding these officers accountable." Witnesses. The mention of Rachel brought a flicker of hope to Maya's heart. Earlier that day, Marcus had contacted Rachel to ask if she'd be willing to testify on Maya's behalf. To their relief, Rachel agreed without hesitation. "I'll do whatever it takes to ensure justice is served," she had told him over the phone. Knowing that someone within the system supported her, gave Maya a renewed sense of purpose. Over the next few days, Maya threw herself into preparing her case. With Marcus and Ms. Patel guiding her every step of the way, she drafted detailed accounts of her encounter with the officers, gathered evidence, including timestamps from her work schedule and statements from coworkers, and compiled photos of the injuries caused by the tight handcuffs. Each task required immense effort, both physically and emotionally, but she approached them with determination. Every document she signed, every statement she wrote was a declaration. She would not be silenced. Meanwhile, news of her ordeal began to spread beyond her immediate circle. A local journalist, tipped off by one of Maya's friends, reached out requesting an interview. At first, Maya hesitated. Speaking publicly meant exposing herself to scrutiny, criticism, and potentially even backlash. But Marcus encouraged her to consider the bigger picture. "This isn't just about you anymore," he said gently. "It's about every person who's ever been profiled, harassed, or mistreated because of their race. Your story could inspire others to speak out too." Inspire others. The idea resonated deeply with Maya. If sharing her experience could spark change, even in a small way, it might be worth the risk. After consulting with Ms. Patel, who assured her that going public wouldn't jeopardize her case, Maya agreed to the interview. The meeting took place at a quiet cafe near Marcus's apartment. The journalist, a kind-faced woman named Claire, listened attentively as Maya recounted her harrowing night. She asked thoughtful questions, allowing Maya to express not only her anger and frustration, but also her hopes for the future. By the end of the conversation, Maya felt a strange sense of catharsis, as if putting her pain into words had lightened its weight, however slightly. When the article was published online a few days later, it quickly gained traction. Social media platforms lit up with reactions, ranging from outrage to empathy to calls for accountability. Protesters began organizing rallies outside the police precinct, holding signs that read, "Justice for Maya," and chanting slogans demanding systemic reform. Local activists reached out, offering resources and support while community leaders vowed to address the issue at city council meetings. For Maya, the sudden spotlight was both empowering and exhausting. On one hand, she was grateful for the solidarity. On the other, she struggled to reconcile her private self with the public figure she was becoming. Strangers stopped her on the street to offer hugs or words of encouragement, and though their intentions were kind, she often found herself longing for anonymity. Through it all, Marcus remained her rock, shielding her from unnecessary stress and reminding her to prioritize her well-being. "You're human, Maya," he told her one evening as they sat together on the balcony of his apartment. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed. No one expects you to have all the answers." His words struck a chord. For so long, Maya had prided herself on being strong, on carrying the weight of the world without complaint. But strength, she realized, wasn't about shouldering burdens alone. It was about leaning on others when needed, accepting help without guilt, and recognizing that vulnerability wasn't a weakness but a form of courage. As the days turned into weeks, Maya began to find solace in unexpected places. Conversations with her mother, who shared stories of her own struggles with racism, reminded her that she came from a lineage of fighters. Late-night talks with Elena, who spoke passionately about intersectional feminism, inspired her to think critically about the broader implications of her experience. And moments of quiet reflection, whether journaling or meditating, allowed her to reconnect with herself amidst the chaos. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, Maya felt a growing sense of clarity. This wasn't just her fight. It belonged to everyone who had ever been marginalized, dismissed, or dehumanized. And as she stood alongside Marcus, Rachel, and countless others determined to create change, she realized something profound. She wasn't just surviving this ordeal. She was rising above it.